Nigeria's federal government has revealed that it is set to miss its 2025 revenue target by about 30 trillion naira, a gap that Finance Minister says is largely driven by weaker than expected oil and non-oil revenues. To keep the budget running, government has increasingly turned to borrowing, a move that has sparked fresh debates around debt sustainability, fiscal discipline, and what this means for public spending. As discussions begin around the 2026-2028 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, questions are now being raised about how realistic Nigeria's revenue projections are and how this growing fiscal strain may affect everyday Nigerians. We have Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics Data Limited. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I mean, a 30 trillion naira revenue gap. That is humongous. When you look at this figure, what does it really tell us about the health of Nigeria's public finances right now?
It doesn't look good. The prognosis is, maybe I'll not be a good medical doctor now. Instead of comforting and consoling the patient, I will just be blunt and be honest. The prognosis is really bad. It's really, really bad. So many people have been shouting themselves hoarse over time. I remember Budget in particular has been shouting that Nigeria's budget is a mess. It has been a mess, sadly. If you look at it, how can you project 40.8 trillion and then you're realizing just a quarter of that, just a quarter? That's to tell you that your parameters were not rooted in reality, right? Even if you're making projections, I know we tend to be optimistic about the projections, about the parameters, and what they claim is that they want these government agencies, the revenue generating agencies, to try to up their game, to do better than before, to reach lofty heights. But consistently, it has shown not to work. And this one will be a call, it will be a wake-up call that it is not working. And I think in the 2026 budget, they tried to make some adjustments. If you look at in 2025, compared to 2024, they doubled the size of the budget. Now they're just being a bit humble. The 2026 budget is even, at least the one that is being proposed now, is less than the 2025 budget that was passed. That's to tell you, and even the parameters, if you look at it for oil revenue, for the oil output, all these things have been brought down. It's not yet uhuru. It's not like they are fully rooted in reality now, but at least we can realize that the government is sobering up. They are realizing that all this, their optimism might not be what will give results, because how can you project 40 trillion and you're realizing only 10 trillion? The difference is much. If you make an estimate and then you're getting something close to it, it's reasonable, right? Or you should even get better than what you're projected. But when you're getting way below that, that shows that you have not really made the right projections. Your projections were never rooted in reality. And it's really sad, because it's going to affect all of us, and the benefits that would have accrued to us if the budget would have been properly presented, properly planned, and well delivered, will not come to Nigerians, particularly the capital aspect, because they're doing their best when it comes to the recurrent, whether the current non-debt or the recurrent debt servicing. They're doing well, and the transfers. But when it comes to capital, which is really about the future, which really benefits everybody, they are not doing so well. And we know that it's not really good.
Yeah, and I think talking about capital projects, we hear it being said that some contractors from as far back as 2024 are still being owed. And I think you already brought this analogy of you being the doctor and providing some sort of prognosis. Is this a spending problem, or is this a revenue problem? Are we not making enough, or we're spending recklessly? Which is it?
I think it's both. It's a bit of both. I think it's more of our inability to generate revenue. Because if you look at the revenue, the GDP of the size of Nigeria's GDP, if you look at our GDP relative to our budget, we're not doing well. The budget is too small, right? And that can be largely be attributable to our inability to generate revenue. we need to do well. If you look at our revenue to GDP ratio, it's one of the lowest in the world. So we need to do something about generated revenue. Somebody will say we should not tax poverty, true, but there are different ways of generating revenue. You can attract investments, aggressively attract investments. We have been accumulating investments, by the way, and we need to do well to attract not portfolio investments, but foreign direct investments. And that way, if we can boost the economy and even the revenue administration, the revenue generation, we need to do well. We need to make sure that it's more efficient, that it is better than it is already. All these things, well, our revenue is not good. And then if you look at our spending too, you cannot generate a particular revenue. At least the best predictor of the future is the past. In the past, you have not generated enough revenue. So what makes you to think that this particular year will be different? I think we should stop being too optimistic. While it's good to be positive, while it's good to be optimistic, those things should be rooted in reality. We should not just be daydreaming and be building castles in the air. So we need to balance the two of them. And in the 2026 budget, we seem to be brought to earth. We seem to be a little bit grounded now. I'm not saying that it's fully rooted in reality, but we are beginning to somehow, we are beginning to behave ourselves to a large extent. And I think we need to do some more.
All right. So it sounds like you're saying keep on this trajectory, but intensify efforts. You highlighted FDIs, right, and that being a key solution to some of these issues. Looking at what has happened this year, 2025, we know that some investors were scared away over the past 2 years because of the heavy reforms. We're seeing some of them, or at least one of them I can cite now, walk back their exit, that is PZ Cousins. They said that they were no longer leaving Nigeria. So do you feel, looking at the reforms that are happening and have happened, the stability somewhat that we're seeing with the currency, inflation, the numbers may be looking good, would you say that we're positioned now to begin to attract that foreign direct investment?
Yes, to some extent. The numbers are looking up. There is an improvement. If you look at the numbers, and I think there's nothing that is as empirical as numbers, things are looking up. But we need to see tangible results because these numbers need to translate. Have we really boosted FDIs because of these improved numbers? We are yet to see that. Is the average Nigerian better off because these numbers are improving? Well, we're yet to see that to a large extent. I believe if you ask the average Nigerian in the state, he will tell you that he's yet to see the results, tangible results, and it's whether it has affected the price of food for him. For example, I know food inflation is the number is also looking up. But there's a lot that needs to be done, and we need to be more aggressive. And if you look at it, somebody was talking about the tax reforms now that will be implemented in 2026. I know Taiwo Ayodele has done his bit and is arguably the best person for the job. But if you look at it, we're talking about 25%, 30%. Some countries are doing way less. And why should somebody bring his money to Nigeria if you have the option of taking it elsewhere where you be taxed next to nothing, or at least tax lower than what we are taxing? So we should not just look at, I know we're trying to augment our revenue, but we should also, the tax base matters. So the more we attract people, the more investments are coming in, the larger the base for us to tax. Instead of taxing a few, and then at the end of the day, we struggle to have enough revenue to fund the budget.
I think we'll see how far the reform takes effect January 1st, 2026, I beg your pardon. So you've talked about FDIs, you've talked about taxes, and I think the low-hanging fruits we often bank on is oil revenues. Where did we miss oil revenues as a source, this year?
Our overdependence on oil revenue has proven our undoing. The dependence on oil revenue is too much. If you look at oil revenue, contribution to GDP is negligible, which means our economy is highly diversified. But for us to diversify our revenue sources and our foreign exchange sources from oil has been a major problem. And people in government, the authorities have been paying lip service. I'm not saying that they have not tried, but there's nothing that actually moves the needle for all the efforts that have been put in over the years. So we need to see tangible results about moving away from oil. And even the current mess that we're in about this 2025 budget is because of over-reliance on crude oil and gas. We need to stop that. I know for now we're solely dependent on it, but we need to really get our act together. We need to find other ways of generating revenue outside oil and gas. Our inability to export is a major problem, and that can largely be attributable to our MSMEs not able to export. If you juxtapose Nigeria with China, for example, the MSMEs in China contribute something in the region of 60% to GDP. Their contribution to export is outsized. It's around 70%. You compare that with Nigeria's. Nigeria's GDP, MSMEs contribute half to GDP, but their contribution to export is 6%. That means they're not exporting. So if we cannot export goods, we can also export services. Nigerians are very intelligent, they're educated. We should find other ways to boost export, and when we export, we're not only generating foreign exchange earnings, we're also generating revenue. So I know this might not be something that we do overnight, but I don't think there's any serious plan in place for us to find an alternative to oil. We have tried, we have been trying. Sadly, nothing that actually moves the needle has been done so far. And it's still coming back to bite us. And that's why we're struggling to fund the budget. And that's why we're pursuing different budgets in a year. You'll be pursuing a particular previous year's budget, the previous year's supplementary budget, the current year's budget, the current year's supplementary budget is a mess. We need to do something about it. And it's basically about revenue. Our inability to generate revenue has been the pain of our budgeting. We need to work on that. At least let's commence doing something. We may not see results immediately, but in the shortest possible time, if we're really honest about it, I believe we should see some results.
Right. And I think let's come to that budget rollover issue. We are carrying 2024 budgets into 2026. What are the dangers inherent in this?
We don't even have the resources to fund all these budgets. And I think we need to face reality. The truth is, we have a revenue problem, primarily a revenue problem. We also have a spending problem. And if you have a budget of 54.99 trillion for 2025, and you're struggling to fund it, you have reduced it maybe by ½ trillion naira to 54.5 trillion for 2026. Why are you going to get the funding for this 2026 budget? So everything should be rooted in reality. We should not just imagine things, sadly, that things will look up. We want these revenue-generating agencies to do better. I know a particular instance around the oil revenue, they try to have a dual production mandates, right? They want the production to go up, but as much as possible for the budget, they are looking at something below what they want the oil industry to do. Maybe they expect the oil industry to produce, like in 2026, above 2 million barrels per day, right? But as far as funding the budget is concerned, it's sub $2 million per day, 2 million barrels per day, sorry. But we need to root everything in reality, not only around the oil revenue. I know the oil revenue is the key one, is the most important one, but in everything, even for our company income tax, for the petroleum profit tax, everything has to be rooted in reality. And like I said earlier, the best predictor of the future is the past. So if you are going to adjust it upwards, it should just be a slight adjustment. So that even if we have surplus, it is going to be better than being constrained to the extent that you only have a quarter of your budget, of your revenue that you have projected. It shows that everything is unhinged and is completely not rooted in reality. And it's not really good. It shows there is like a lack of fiscal discipline. It shows we have not really planned well, and we are not really organized.
Yeah, I think that has to be some cause for concern, and hopefully we see that remedied. Looking at the budget ahead now, we're seeing oil assumptions of 2.06 million barrels per day. And then the price is at $64.85. And obviously, there's also the exchange rate assumption of 1,512 naira to the dollar. What do you make of these assumptions? Hopefully, do you believe we're in for another shock looking at where the economy is heading? Or do you think that some of these assumptions are spot on and we're less likely to run into any issues in terms of revenue based on these assumptions?
I think the numbers, whether for the oil production or for the price of 1 barrel of crude in the international price, I think for 2026 is closer to reality than what we had in 2025. There is a slight improvement, but the slight improvement is welcome, but we need to do everything possible to stay away from over-dependence on crude oil. I know for now it's a cash cow. I know that we cannot do without it for now. But what exactly are we doing so that in the next 1 or 2 years, we don't have to be so dependent on oil that if the oil sector doesn't do well, or at least doesn't do as projected, we will not find ourselves in this same situation that we're in. So there's a need to do some more. And domestically, we should not only depend on what the selling of crude oil internationally should fetch for Nigeria. What we can do domestically too. I know Dangote is on stream, and other refineries are on stream. So those things can also be deployed to help us to be a bit self-reliant instead of depending on the international market with the volatility. You know, the oil sector, the oil industry is highly volatile. It's not something you can predict easily. And sometimes things look so good, we have a windfall. Other times things may not look so good and we struggle to fund the budget. So this has been the case for generations. And sadly, we have noticed the problem. We have, to some extent, we understand that this is a major problem. But getting a solution has really eluded us. So I think the authorities, the fiscal authorities, need to sit down and see how this thing cannot be a recurring decimal again. We cannot afford to be making the same mistake again and again, right? We like Einstein would say, we need to find a different ways of doing things if we want different results. Because for now, we still seem to be doing the same thing. And it's not getting us the desired results. It is not working. So we need to find other ways of getting things done. I know the tax reform is a welcome development. We are hopeful that it will give us the desired results, right? We cannot just be dependent on one source, whether it's a tax reform, whether it's adjusting the parameters for the production, daily production, or the price of a barrel of oil. All these things, we need to do some more and try to get our act together so that the Nigerian people do not bear the brunt of it at the end of the day.
And speaking of the Nigerian people, what impact do you see this having on us?
Well, it means less infrastructure because it's basically the capital aspect that suffers, or at least if not less, delayed things that would have been done previously. We keep putting them off, right? We keep kicking the can down the road, maybe a particular project that would have been finished. And when you don't finish a government project, it's money down the drain, money that is better allocated elsewhere. And then the usefulness or the utility that particular thing would have given to the Nigerian people and would have boosted the Nigerian economy will also elude the Nigerian economy. And even the multiplier effect of spending within a particular year, the money that would have been spent, this 30 trillion that the government would have gotten and spent this year, the multiplier effect could have been maybe 1 trillion naira added to the value of the Nigerian GDP with better income and livelihoods for many people. All these things will have to be postponed or possibly indefinitely. We are postponing it till next year, but possibly indefinitely. So all the benefits that would have accrued to the Nigerian economy and ultimately to the Nigerian people will not come because the government is not able to fund some of these budgets. And particularly if you look at the infrastructure, if you look at human capital, all these things will be affected because the government does not have the resources to spend. Mind you, we were talking about subsidy removal. Many of us thought that the moment this subsidy is removed, there were freeing up resources that are better allocated for all these things are being used to subsidize pump price of fuel. We remove subsidy, and we're still struggling. So it's really sad. The Nigerian people are bearing the brunt of higher pump price of fuel, yet they are not also getting those freed up resources that would be able to build roads for them, bridges, and healthcare, delivery, education, and so on. Sadly, we're not seeing those things. So it's just a double whammy for the Nigerian people because you're paying more for fuel, and then the benefits that you have been promised are not coming. So basically, it's not going well for us in the country as far as this particular budget is concerned.
I mean, I imagine, and I think what would you say are the key lessons now for the government? What should they learn from this, and what should be the action going forward? The different arms of government as well, right? Not just those in ministries, but even those in the National Assembly.
Well, I think in the immediate term, we need to put all our budget parameters in reality. We should be very honest with ourselves and not be optimistic. We have been over-optimistic, not just optimistic, when it comes to our budgeting. And then there should be fiscal discipline. If some resources are assigned for your particular purposes, then they must be deployed for those particular purposes. And particularly, I think we are giving precedence to debt servicing, and we keep accumulating more debt, meaning more debt servicing, and the current personnel cost and overhead and so on. While what really matters, what every Nigerian benefits from, which is the capital aspect, might be suffering. So we need to prioritize that. And I'm not saying that those other ones that are given priority should be discarded, no. But I'm saying all parts of the budget are important and they should be given all the importance. If we are overstretching ourselves by having a budget of 50 trillion that we cannot fund, then maybe we should come down to earth and have a budget that we know we can fund, and then Nigerians will see the benefit in the shortest possible time. Then in the long term, we need to find alternatives to our revenue, right? Within the next 2-3 years, it should be very obvious that there's a material change away from oil revenue so that we are not just subject to the volatility and the inability of the oil industry to deliver on the revenue that the Nigerian authorities have projected for any particular budget.
So time for a reality check, pretty much. Thank you so much for your time, perspective, and recommendations, Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited.
Thank you for having me.